Let me tell you about a wrongful arrest story that is messed up beyond belief. The Florida Highway Patrol ignored clear evidence from the night of a deadly crash, including a 911 call from someone who described a maroon Dodge Durango with a partial tag starting with 458. Instead, ignoring this, they used flock license plate readers, identified a black Dodge Durango, realized it belonged to Lindsey Isaacs, but they didn't arrest her yet. After 6 months go by, Isaacs sues to get her car released, and just days before that civil hearing was scheduled, suddenly she's arrested. So let me tell you about this mess. Starting all the way back at the beginning, on October 4th, 2025, at 9:53 p.m., a multi-vehicle crash on eastbound Interstate 4 near mile marker 107 in Volusia County killed 3 people and seriously injured a 4th person. The vehicles involved were a silver-gray Ford Focus, a black Honda Pilot, and a Suzuki motorcycle driven by Joaquin Deno. The at-fault vehicle that caused the accident fled the scene. Now again, that's October 4th, 2025. 6 months later, on April 17th, 2026, Florida Highway Patrol arrested 23-year-old Lindsey Brooke Isaacs of Palm Coast and charged her with 8 felonies. 3 counts of leaving scene of crash with death, 1 count of leaving scene of a crash with serious injury, 3 counts of vehicular homicide, and a count of reckless driving causing serious injury. Now let's talk about the initial investigation, the wrong path. We're going to get the information from the affidavit for arrest, which, even though this happened back in October 4th of 2025, note that this was filed April 17th of 2026. So this was prepared by Sergeant Tiffany Jadif. And it states, Lindsey Brooke Isaacs was the driver, sole occupant, and registered owner of a Dodge Durango with a tag of RJVN10 that was involved in a motor vehicle collision on October 4th, 2025. At approximately 9:53 p.m. on Interstate 4 in the area of mile marker 108 within Volusia County, Florida. The Durango was traveling eastbound on Interstate 4 in the center travel lane. The left side of the Durango struck the right side of a Ford Focus sedan. The Durango subsequently traveled to the right. The right side of the Durango struck a Suzuki GSX 1300R motorcycle. The driver of the Suzuki was thrown from the motorcycle. The force of being struck by the Durango caused the Focus to travel off the roadway to the left and strike the guardrail of the median. The Focus then re-entered the roadway, and the front left of the Focus struck the right rear of a Honda Pilot, causing the Pilot to travel off the roadway to the right and strike a tree, which caused catastrophic damage to the vehicle. The force of the impact was likely to cause great bodily harm or death to its occupants. The driver of the Suzuki, the driver of the Pilot, and the front passenger of the Pilot died because of the injuries they sustained in this crash. The driver of the Focus sustained serious bodily injury in this crash. After the collision, the driver of the Durango fled the scene without stopping and did not report the traffic crash to law enforcement. Now pay attention to the damage to the vehicles on scene. The right side of the Focus has circular black marks consistent with being struck by a tire. The left side of the Focus has damage which is consistent with striking a guardrail. The front left of the Focus has damage consistent to the damage located to the rear left of the Pilot. The front left side of the Durango has scrape marks and scuffs near the left front tire consistent with that of tire making contact with the Focus. Measurements taken of the left side tires on the Durango are of consistent height and width to tire marks observed and measured on the right side of the Focus. The surviving driver stated she was driving eastbound on Interstate 4 when she suddenly saw light coming from the right side, felt the impact, then struck the guardrail. She did not observe any vehicles involved due to how quickly the crash occurred. She sustained a broken right wrist, 11 herniated discs, permanent nerve damage in her legs, and is unable to work due to injuries from this crash. Independent witness provided a sworn recorded statement to Senior Corporal Gregory Reed at the scene. During the interview, he, when describing the Durango. For continuity purposes, Durango will be utilized in this narrative. A summary of his statement is as follows. He was driving eastbound on Interstate 4 from mile marker 106 towards mile marker 108 in the middle lane when 8 to 12 bikes passed by him in the fast lane, the left lane. A couple seconds later, a black Durango with a Florida plate flew by me in the slow lane, also traveling eastbound, swerved across all 3 lanes of traffic into the front of the pack of bikers, all the way to the point the Durango almost hit the median guardrail. Lopes-Silvero then states that the Durango swerved back into the middle lane and continued eastbound. However, he did not realize the motorcycle had actually ran off the roadway due to the dark conditions. He believed the Durango caused both accidents. And then how do we find this suspect black Dodge Durango, which actually isn't the vehicle that caused the crash, but how did we get there? So a black Dodge Durango with a Florida license plate was located on a flock license plate reader camera, traveling eastbound on Interstate 4 at the Seminole-Volusia County line at 9:51 p.m. This location is approximately 3 miles west of the crash scene for eastbound traffic. The Durango was then located on flock camera at 10:28 p.m. at northbound U.S. Highway 1 and Seminole Woods Boulevard in Flagler County, Florida. This location is approximately a quarter mile from where the Durango was located at Lindsey Brooke Isaacs' apartment complex, Integra Woods. Then they see what address the Durango is registered to, and Trooper Mario Gonzalez was dispatched to go to that address in an attempt to make contact with the registered owner. And when Gonzalez gets there, he speaks with Lindsey Brooke Isaacs' father, Ronald, who advised where his daughter lived. So then they go to the apartment complex, and the Durango was parked outside of Isaacs' apartment. And then they say the marks located on the left side of the Durango were consistent with the damage located on the right side of the Focus. Just consistent with. Marks. Marks on the Durango are consistent with the damage on the Focus. Trooper Nicholas Schmeider and I located Lindsey Brooke Isaacs' apartment and knocked on her door loudly for several minutes in an attempt to speak with her, but she did not answer her door. Her parents drove from Ocala, Florida, to our location in Palm Coast, arriving at least an hour and a half after initial contact was made with them, and woke Lindsey Brooke Isaacs up, bringing her outside to speak with us. After being advised that the Florida Highway Patrol has reason to believe her Durango was involved in a crash, Lindsey Brooke Isaacs made several spontaneous statements to include, "I didn't hit anything. I didn't go anywhere after 6:30 p.m. When I left for 1 hour, my car was perfectly fine. And I'm a good driver." Lindsey Brooke Isaacs also stated that someone must have stolen her car. She advised that she was still in possession of both sets of her car keys and that no one else had access to her car. She also advised she locked her vehicle doors multiple times when she last exited her vehicle to go into her apartment, and that there was no damage to her vehicle at that time. She stated she'd been in Davenport, Florida earlier in the evening at her friend's store, the Vape Up Cafe. While in contact with her and her parents, her father was asked several times not to approach the Durango due to it being evidence of a crime. Troopers were concerned that Miss Isaacs or her family members would touch the areas of the Durango which had damage and contaminate potential evidence, such as evidence of paint transfer from the other vehicles involved in the crash. It was also learned Lindsey Brooke Isaacs made several telephone calls to her parents earlier in the night after the time of this traffic crash. Furthermore, Trooper Schmeider and I observed what appeared to be, this is a quote, smudge or rub marks in the areas where the fresh damage was located in the Durango, appearing that it was attempted to be cleaned or wiped away prior to our arrival. In addition, it was actively raining on the vehicle, potentially contaminating or causing evidence to be lost. It should be noted, the height of these observed smudges or rub marks are also consistent with the Durango sideswiping a motorcycle or its driver while seated in the motorcycle seat. Surveillance video was obtained from the Vape Up Cafe in Davenport, Florida. The video shows a black Dodge Durango arriving in the parking lot at 8:08 p.m. on October 4th, 2025. Lindsey Brooke Isaacs can be seen exiting the driver's seat of the vehicle. Lindsey Brooke Isaacs then enters the store. She exits the store at 8:20 p.m. Then she gets in the driver's seat of the Durango and leaves the parking lot at 8:22 p.m. A review of additional license plate reader data shows the Durango was traveling on eastbound U.S. Highway 192 at Westside Boulevard at 9:01 p.m. and eastbound 192 and Interstate 4 at 9:15 p.m. Based upon the timeline determined by video surveillance footage from the Vape Up Cafe, flock camera vehicle location data, the time of the traffic crash in Volusia County, the time of the vehicle location within Flagler County, and spontaneous statements made outside of her apartment are consistent with the Durango operated by Lindsey Brooke Isaacs being at the traffic crash scene when it occurred. Furthermore, independent witness statements identified said Durango being operated aggressively/erratically, at speeds of more than 100 miles per hour. This reckless driving pattern caused a traffic crash, which resulted in the death of 3 human beings and serious bodily injury to 1 human being. So there's probable cause to believe Lindsey Brooke Isaacs knew or should have known she was involved in a traffic crash, which resulted in the deaths of 3 people and serious bodily injury to another. Lindsey Brooke Isaacs failed to remain at the scene of the crash, failed to render aid to those involved in the traffic crash, and failed to notify law enforcement/fulfill the requirements of the statute. Signed off by Affiant Sergeant Tiffany Jatiff with the Florida Highway Patrol. And notably, this was sworn off on April 16th, 2026. Now, the reason this is interesting is because the search warrant for the Dodge Durango was obtained by Jatiff on October 10th, 2025, so like 6 days after the crash. And that search warrant had the representation that the damage located on the left side of Isaacs' black Dodge Durango was consistent with the damage located on the right side of the Ford Focus. Now, what happens between that search warrant on October 10th, 2025, 6 days after the accident, and the arrest warrant being filled out on April 16th, 2026? Well, on February 5th, 2026, Miss Isaacs, through her attorneys, filed a motion to get her vehicle released from impound. And this is a replevin motion where any person whose personal property is wrongfully detained by any other person or officer may have a writ of replevin to recover said personal property and any damages sustained by reason of the wrongful taking or detention as herein provided. Their argument for this was, you're holding this vehicle, no charges have been filed. So this is filed on February 5th, 2026. There's an order to show cause hearing scheduled for April 30th. And 2 weeks before that hearing rolls around, we get that arrest warrant affidavit. Lindsey Isaacs is arrested, and Florida Highway Patrol files a motion to dismiss or dissolve. And the judge takes judicial notice of the new criminal case, State of Florida versus Lindsey Isaacs, which conveniently hit the docket on April 17th. And they say, oh, well, we're going to deny your replevin motion. We're going to continue to hold your car because now it's evidence and you've been charged. And it's only been 6 months. Oh, well, too bad, so sad. Once the criminal case was filed, enter attorney Patrick McGeehan. He files on behalf of Miss Isaacs a motion to quash arrest warrant, suppress evidence, and request for a Franks hearing. And he makes the argument that the affidavit relies on ownership of the vehicle, generalized witness observations, and the expectation that future forensic testing may identify the operator. It says that that's insufficient as a matter of law. More specifically, McGeehan argues that the state has represented that forensic evidence would likely identify the operator, demonstrating that identity was not established at the time of the warrant. And he references the state's motion to intervene and responds to the petition for writ of replevin in the case where Lindsey was trying to get her Durango back. McGeehan reiterates that probable cause cannot be based on future evidence. In its arrest warrant affidavit, crash report, and search warrant affidavit, the state alleges a massive high-speed 100 to 115 mile per hour collision wherein the defendant's Dodge Durango struck a Ford Focus with such force that the Ford was sent off the roadway into a guardrail before re-entering the roadway and colliding with a Honda Pilot, killing the occupants of the Pilot. The defendant then allegedly swerved to the right and impacted a Suzuki motorcycle with enough force to eject the rider, killing him. In the state's motion to intervene, filed in the impound case, the state focused on whether additional forensic analysis may identify the operator of the vehicle. In the state's replevin filing and the attached search warrant materials, the state represented that the vehicle was being retained for additional analysis, including DNA, fingerprint, event data recorder, infotainment, and seat position evidence that would likely, that's quoted, identify the operator at the time of the collision. Of course, DNA, fingerprints, and other such evidence of the defendant would be expected to be found in the Dodge Durango, as it's her personal vehicle that she drives daily. Such a finding would not be dispositive of the defendant's involvement in this collision. The state alleges that when they found the Dodge Durango, it had damage to the left side consistent with the collision with the Ford Focus. Yet there is no mention in the investigation of damage to the right side of the Dodge Durango consistent with impacting the Suzuki. The state's lone witness, as quoted in the arrest warrant affidavit, says he was traveling behind a semi-truck when the collision occurred. He allegedly saw the Durango swerve into a pack of motorcycles across all 3 lanes and almost hit the median guardrail. He could not see the other vehicles and, quote, believes the Durango caused both accidents. He further states, I could assume this accident could have caused. He says at no time does the witness provide any further description of the vehicle other than a black Dodge Durango with a Florida license plate. There is no description whatsoever of the defendant or anyone else. Considering the massive collision described by the witness and documented by the Florida Highway Patrol, one would expect to find the Dodge Durango with extensive damage to both left and right sides. The damage allegedly found by the Florida Highway Patrol on the Durango is described simply as marks, smudges, or rub marks. Additionally, one would expect to find evidence of such a high-speed, multi-impact, multi-vehicle collision on the Durango's electronic data recorder. Yet there's no mention of such evidence. There is no indication of matching paint transfer between the Durango and the Ford Focus, nor of rubber transfer between the left front tire of the Durango and the tire marks as described by the Florida Highway Patrol on the Focus. The left front tire of the Durango appears to be unremarkable. Additionally, the arrest warrant in this case states that the defendant was the driver, sole occupant, and registered owner of the Dodge Durango involved in this case. This allegation is speculative, and throughout the remainder of the warrant, there is no description of how the state reached such a conclusion. In short, thus far in this investigation, the state has absolutely no evidence identifying or linking the defendant as the driver of a vehicle involved in this collision. Even giving the state the benefit of the doubt and viewing the information in the light most favorable to the state, with the scant, quote, evidence, in quotes, described in the arrest and search warrant affidavits, there's no probable cause for the defendant's arrest. An invalid warrant requires suppression of all derivative evidence, and the defendant requests a Franks hearing based on omissions and mischaracterizations in the affidavit regarding identity and evidentiary certainty. So there we go, signed off on by Mr. McGeehan. So already, pretty big deal. We have this terrible high-speed crash with multiple purported impacts, and the best description we have is marks, smudges. We don't have dents. We don't have scratches. We don't have paint transfer. It's been 6 months, and we haven't looked at the infotainment system. But it gets worse. So after Miss Isaacs spent almost 2 weeks wrongfully arrested, and even after she got released on bond, went home and had to deal with the stigma of the false accusation that she killed 3 people and seriously injured a 4th and fled the scene, we have the state drop charges on May 22nd.
I feel there's really no way of fixing what they did to me. It will always hurt me. My reputation was ruined. I'm still receiving death threats and hate. It's very hard. Time will heal, I hope.
Also on May 22nd, we have an arrest warrant affidavit submitted by Corporal David Brunner from the Florida Highway Patrol for a woman by the name of Alisa Lee Montalvo. She is now charged with the same things that Lindsey Isaacs was charged with, plus an additional count of tampering with or fabricating evidence. So this arrest warrant goes through the history of the accident and the history of dealing with Miss Isaacs incorrectly. But we get some additional context on what the state started doing, how they started looking at their own investigation and realized how bad it was with this affidavit. So we get this additional context that on April 27th, right in the middle of the fight to get the car out of impound, Assistant State Attorney Mike Willard reached out to Corporal Brian Gensler of the Florida Highway Patrol Specialized Investigation and Reconstruction Teams, the SIRT team, and asked for crash reconstruction and investigative support. It was discovered the state attorney's office uncovered discrepancies, which prompted the request. On May 6th, 2026, a meeting occurred with the SIRT team, the DeLand THI unit, which I think is the Trooper Homicide Investigation Unit, and the state attorney's office to review the case and the discrepancies. After reviewing the case files, SIRT assumed control of the case. At the conclusion of this meeting, Corporal David Brunner was assigned as the lead investigator of this case. So on May 6, 2026, SIRT goes to inspect the black Dodge Durango. The SIRT team did not find any damage on this vehicle, suggesting it was involved in a crash with another vehicle. SIRT then inspected the Focus and observed heavy left side damage consistent with a guardrail strike. SIRT also observed moderate to heavy right side damage consistent with a hard side swipe with rubber tire marks. On the right side of the Focus, SIRT found several areas what appeared to be red or maroon paint transfer on both right side doors, front fender, and front right wheel. The next vehicle SIRT inspected was the black Pilot. This vehicle sustained heavy left side damage consistent with a tree strike. The right rear portion of the rear bumper had what appeared to be gray or silver paint transfer, possibly from the Focus. The next vehicle SIRT inspected was the motorcycle. The motorcycle also sustained heavy left side damage consistent with the tree strike. Several parts were missing from the left side of the motorcycle. So we have red paint. The only paint transfer observed that likely didn't belong to one of the other vehicles found on scene was red paint, maroon paint. And then it gets worse. SIRT reviews the names of witnesses obtained during the initial crash investigation, computer-aided dispatch reports, CAD reports, from the Florida Highway Patrol and Volusia County Sheriff's Office, and 911 callers, and the state attorney investigator. SIRT began to reach out to the witnesses to obtain follow-up statements. Now get this, remember we had no witness that observed Lindsey Isaacs in the vehicle or what the driver may have looked like. But during these investigations, during these follow-up interviews, Destiny Deno is interviewed. Destiny Deno indicated her husband, Mr. Raphael Class, and several other motorcycle riders meet at Elevate to celebrate an early birthday for one of her children. Elevate Fun Center is an entertainment center for children and adults located in the town center circle in Sanford. Destiny indicated her husband, other motorcycle riders, and Deno spent less than 2 hours at this location playing the games. Destiny exited the amusement center to meet with the rest of her friends who were in the parking lot at a motorcycle meetup. While in the parking lot, Destiny indicated Miss Alisa Montalvo, that's the woman who is now arrested, had arrived in the parking lot and parked a few rows over from her vehicle. Destiny indicated that Montalvo was talking with Deno while they hung out outside with the motorcycle get-together. The family group planned to all go back to Destiny residence to get cake and have dinner somewhere after dropping off the motorcycles. Destiny indicated Deno had already departed the parking lot to help another biker with a mechanical issue. Destiny indicated Montalvo was the only person to get into her Maroon Durango. So she was the driver. But we have a witness identifying Montalvo visually getting into a Maroon Durango. Nobody else. Destiny indicated there was no one with Montalvo as they left the parking lot. Destiny indicated Montalvo was ahead of her in the turn lane to get onto eastbound Interstate 4. As all the riders were getting on the interstate, Deno was exiting the parking lot of the Wawa gas station. Deno went ahead of Destiny and joined the pack of motorcycles. Destiny indicated as they began to travel east on the interstate for a few minutes, she lost sight of all the bikers, Deno, and Montalvo. The total distance between Elevate is approximately 8 miles to the crash scene. Destiny indicated the traffic began to slow and brake. Destiny moved to the left lane and began to pass the stopping traffic and noticed her husband Class and others pulling over to the side of the road. Destiny indicated she then pulled over to the side of the interstate to see what happened. Destiny indicated when she pulled over, she thinks she observed Montalvo had pulled off to the shoulder, with several vehicles ahead of her vehicle but was not sure. Destiny then began to look for Class, who was assisting the other victims of the traffic crash. After finding her husband, she asked where her dad was. Destiny began to search for her dad via the Apple phone app and realized he was farther back down the interstate. Other bikers found her dad and intercepted her before she could locate him and told Destiny that he was down and that she needed to take the kids back home. So that's when she finds out that her father is hit and killed. As she left the scene, she never saw Montalvo at the scene. Destiny indicated she has had many previous get-togethers in the past 6 months, and Miss Montalvo was considered a friend of the family, especially with her dad, Deno. After the crash, there were only 2 text messages from Montalvo the 2 days after the crash. Since then, there's been no other communications or contact with Montalvo. So remember in the arrest warrant for Lindsey Isaacs, we had the one witness identifying, like, they thought it was a black Durango, and it looked like it pulled over for a second and then drove away. And here, with this follow-up interview where we're speaking to other witnesses and getting more information, we find out these critical pieces of information where someone sees what's actually a maroon vehicle that was known to be traveling with the party, where we know who was driving the vehicle. It's not just speculative. We're not just looking up the registration and trying to guess. But we see this Durango, albeit a different color, pull over to the side of the road and then pull away. Nobody ever gets out of the Durango, but they did pull over briefly. That tracks with the original affidavit. Then we get this additional context that, hey, this same friend was always around, and suddenly there's no more communication. It just falls back. We have another witness, Veronica Leigh Frederico. She observed a black SUV. This black SUV had pulled out as if they were in a hurry or fleeing a scene. This black SUV then exited off Interstate 4 at mile marker 108. Frederico exited off the same exit. Frederico noticed heavy damage to the outside of the SUV. Frederico noticed a female driver behind the wheel of the black SUV through the open passenger window. Frederico also stated the airbags had deployed on the driver's side of this black SUV. This vehicle eventually made a left turn down Deltona Boulevard, driving erratically before she lost sight of it. So another thing that you might want to look for 6 days later when you locate what you think is the correct Durango, is there evidence that the airbags were deployed? Is there heavy damage? Do we see heavy damage? Can we look at any infotainment information that would track this path of travel? And it doesn't look like any of those things were done in the initial stages, although this witness reported these details. Next, we have 911 calls. They review the 911 calls, which you would think would be something they would do right away. But here we are. Here we are, reading this affidavit that was prepared only after SIRT stepped onto the scene. Reviewing the 911 calls made to the Volusia County Sheriff's Department the night of the crash from calling in this crash. An unknown called to report this crash and stated that a maroon Dodge Durango caused this crash, driving like a mad person, with the first three of the license plate of 458. That is not Lindsey Isaacs' license plate number. He was able to provide the description of V2 as well without stopping at the scene of the crash, so he gives another vehicle description. So Corporal Brunner obtained a sworn statement from this 911 caller who was identified as James Amundo. Amundo stated he was traveling eastbound on Interstate 4 in the far left lane when he observed a group of bikers coming on from the entrance ramp. Amundo stated a maroon Durango was right behind the bikers. He stated it appeared the maroon Durango was mad at them, possibly like a road rage. Amundo stated the bikes cut in front of him as the maroon Durango came up next to him in the center lane. Amundo stated the maroon Durango then cut him off and made him back off a little. The tag, just in case something happens because of her aggressive driving. Amundo stated the bikes and the maroon took off at a higher rate of speed. Amundo indicated at one point this maroon Durango was swerving across all three lanes and at one point drove off the road to the left, onto the shoulder, almost striking the guardrail. As he continued, he lost sight of the bikes and the maroon Durango in front of a larger truck. Immediately, he saw brake lights and the vehicles traveling off the road and knew a crash just happened, and the maroon Durango caused the entire crash. Amundo called 911 and only gave the first three digits of the tag 458 that he remembered and said she was driving like a mad person and caused this entire crash. As he was passing the scene, he looked over to the right and observed the maroon Durango pulled over to the right because he thought she might leave the scene. Once he observed the Durango stop, and when 911 dismissed his call, he hung up and thought the Durango stayed at the scene. Isn't that important information? You have a 911 call following the car accident. And the arrest warrant for Lindsey Isaacs is completely devoid of this information. She was wrongfully arrested and accused of killing 3 people and seriously injuring another and fleeing the scene. And her vehicle was just being held for 6 months, all willy-nilly, until she asked for it back, and then they go, oh, let's prepare an arrest warrant. Even though we haven't looked at the infotainment, even though we haven't reviewed any 911 calls apparently. It's ludicrous. So they say SIRT was able to identify the maroon Durango belonging to Montalvo with the partial tag and the full tag given by Destiny. So SIRT uses the information they get and figures it out. A background check of this 2021 Maroon Durango revealed the following information. And so they detail here that they have different images from before the time of the accident. They're using a vigilant report to show that in June, they could see the driver's side of the vehicle in pictures. And it was a full-length view of the driver's side, and the doors are visibly the same shade of red as the rest of the vehicle. Both driver's side windows are tinted, and there are window rain guards on the driver's side doors. Then they have more pictures of the right side of the vehicle, as close in time to the accident as October 3rd, 2025, so the day before. There's no damage on the right rear door in the photo. The next photo recovered after the crash was October 8th, 2025, at 12:02 p.m. at what appears to be Montalvo's residence. The photo was taken from the rear of the vehicle and no damage can be observed. However, the left rear tire appears to be partially deflated. The very next photo is taken at a residence on November 7th, 2025. The photo is taken from an angle where the driver's side is difficult to see. However, the left rear tire appears to be partially deflated. Also in the photo, a trailer is observed to be located on to the left side of the vehicle. What appears to be a vehicle door was seen on the trailer. The vehicle is photographed again at the Alpine residence, the same residence, on November 10th, but only the rear and a portion of the right side were visible. On November 25th, 2025, the vehicle is photographed at the Alpine residence again. The vehicle was moved off the concrete driveway and onto the grass in front of the trailer. There are no vehicle doors visible on the trailer. The driver's side of the vehicle can be viewed. There are no window rain guards on the doors, and the driver's windows is not tinted. Due to the sun glare, the color of the doors appears to be the same as the rest of the vehicle. Several additional photographs are taken of the vehicle at the Alpine residence, with the last one being on November 25th, 2025. On December 12th, the vehicle is photographed back on the roadway, away from the residence. A dent is clearly seen on the right rear door. The vehicle is next photographed on December 17th, 2025, at Montalvo's residence. The vehicle is photographed several more times, with only the right side being able to be viewed. On March 1st, 2026, the vehicle is photographed near Spirit Elementary School, and the driver's side of the vehicle is able to be seen. The image is black and white, but the driver and left rear door were visibly different shades than the rest of the vehicle. They also do a search for insurance claims, and even though there were several prior insurance claims attached to Mrs. Montalvo, there was only one prior entry for this vehicle, a shipping record, and none of the entries were related to this investigation. Then they look at flock LPR photos, and an image from May 1st, 2026 was viewed, and it was observed that the driver and left rear door on the vehicle was visibly a lighter shade of red than the rest of the vehicle. The driver's side window was not tinted, and there were no window rain guards on the driver's side of the vehicle. Numerous photos of the right side of the vehicle showed both passenger side windows tinted. The doors were the same shade of red as the rest of the vehicle, and there were window rain guards on both doors. An image from May 6 showed the right side of the vehicle, and there is a dent on the right rear door. So on Tuesday, May 12th, 2026, Corporal Brunner travels to an address to locate the 2021 red Dodge Durango. He arrives at 6:10 a.m., sees the red Dodge Durango with Florida license plate 458-9XQ. They get a search warrant for the Maroon Durango. On May 16th, Brunner conducts a traffic stop on the Maroon Durango and identified the driver as Alisa Montalvo, and seized both the vehicle and cellular phones inside her vehicle for forensic analysis. During the traffic stop, it was noted that the driver's side door had a different VIN number than the registered 2021 Dodge Durango. Brunner also identified damage to the right rear door and lower left panel of this Durango. So they impound the car, and during the post-collision inspection, it was confirmed that there's significant evidence of concealment and damage consistent with this crash. The driver's side doors had been replaced, the curtain airbag had been unbolted/removed, the seat airbag was stuffed back into the seat. The EDR download showed the vehicle was traveling at 112 miles per hour 5 seconds before the algorithm was enabled. A receipt was also located within the vehicle where 4 tires were balanced and mounted on November 18th. Next, SIRT determined the Maroon Durango had been at 3 Alpine Street in Altamonte Springs. It was determined that Edwin Roman resides at that address. It was determined that Roman frequently scraps vehicle parts and other metals. We made contact with Roman at his workplace and obtained a sworn statement. During this interview, and that's redacted, Roman stated Montalvo brought the car to him around October 9th when he took a photograph of the left side damage and the VIN number on the door. Roman showed Corporal Brunner and Sergeant Baker a picture of the damage. On October 10th, he went to Miami to purchase both side driver's doors, the lower rocker panel, and the left side airbag. Roman stated on October 11th he placed the doors and rocker panel. He showed Corporal Brunner and Sergeant Baker the pictures of the repairs. Roman indicated he did not replace the airbag. He also purchased 4 new tires and placed them on the vehicle around November 17th and 18th. Roman then showed Zelle payments where Montalvo paid him on October 10th and 11th for $500 each, and then again on November the 18th for $500 for the tires. Roman stated he put the damaged doors out on the end of the driveway for trash and kept the deployed airbag. Later, Roman gave Corporal Brunner the deployed airbag. This proves Montalvo paid Roman for the repair work and was tampering with the evidence of this crash. And then some recreation here. So Brunner notes that the area of this crash is in a very dark location with no streetlights or ambient lighting in the area. A maroon vehicle can appear to be black in a setting such as this during a high stressful event for an untrained observer. Brunner and Baker drove the same route as Montalvo, the decedents, and the witnesses during almost dark conditions. Even in the dark conditions, Brunner and Baker had the opportunity to observe a red and maroon vehicle under similar conditions. Both Corporal Brunner and Sergeant Baker agreed that a maroon vehicle could easily be confused with a black Durango. All this evidence supports a maroon Durango and not a black Durango. In addition to the facts stated above, we have probable cause to believe that the driving actions of Montalvo in a reckless manner caused and contributed to this fatal crash. This fact also supports that Montalvo left the scene and did not report the crash to the authorities. By contacting Roman to repair the damage to her vehicle clearly shows Montalvo not only knew the crash happened, but tried to conceal and destroy evidence of her crimes. Signed off on the 22nd day of May 2026, Corporal David Brunner with the Florida Highway Patrol. So on May 22nd, Alisa Lee Montalvo is arrested. She's charged with 9 criminal offenses. And on May 22nd, that no information, the dropping of the charges, was filed in Lindsey Brooke Isaacs' criminal case. Miss Isaacs and her attorney both spoke to the press after her charges were dropped.
This is a 2025 Dodge Durango that is black, and it is absolutely immaculate, as it was the day she drove it off the showroom floor. There was absolutely no damage to Lindsey Isaacs' vehicle. As soon as we did the vehicle inspection in this case, we knew she was innocent.
Patrick McGeehan shared a video of the black Durango, of Miss Isaacs' black Durango, picking it up from impound. I'll link the video in the description. Play a little I Spy, see if you see any damages consistent with how this crash was described. And let me know your thoughts on this case. I think it's a ridiculous example of sitting on thumbs and not doing investigative work. Luckily, SIRT was able to come in and backtrack and get a lot of the information, all the puzzle pieces together, do some follow-ups, get some new information, and seemingly catch the correct person, or at least, at the very least, an individual where there's astonishingly more probable cause to back up the arrest. So of course, Alisa Montalvo will now have her day in court, and Lindsey Isaacs never should have been made to go to court in the first place. That's how I feel. So that wraps it up. Lindsey Isaacs has her black Durango back. Her criminal charges are gone. She's still probably got to deal with some reputation cleanup that she never should have to deal with. And the case against Alisa Lee Montalvo is still ongoing. All of the information I read in this video come from court documents, and I've also linked to a bunch of sources and documents in the description if you want to dive deep into this case. And that wraps it up. So thank you for watching. Let me know your thoughts and take care.